This is the perfect outcome for the Minnesota Vikings, as a recent report has detailed the Vikings in a trade at this draft with the Kansas City Chiefs. We're going to be talking about what this trade is, how this would impact the Minnesota Vikings, and what the odds are of this actually happening, because we know something like this is bound to happen, and it's just a matter of time, and it seems like the Chiefs are the perfect team to do it. Like I mentioned, we're going to be talking about all of that here in this video. Very quickly, before we jump into this video, though, be sure to hit the sub button if you haven't already. We notice that just over 75% of you guys watching right now are not subscribed to the channel. But without any further ado, let's hop into this video. Starting off here with our first screenshot, going over the idea behind this in an NFL mock draft. The Chiefs' offense was dismantled by the Philadelphia Eagles pass rush in the Super Bowl. Although they have 31st overall pick in the draft, they could try to move up and land a premier left tackle. Athlon Sports' Luke Easterling predicted the Chiefs would make a massive trade with the Minnesota Vikings to move up 7 spots and draft Kelvin Banks Jr. Now, the idea of the Minnesota Vikings trading their pick away, the 24th overall, is not a new idea. It's an idea that's been spoken quite a bit by the Minnesota Vikings, the community, the fans, critics, everybody alike is talking about the Vikings moving back in this draft to get a much bigger sample size of picks in this year's draft. The Vikings are going to be looking for a few key assets here in any move that they make at this year's NFL draft, including making some more picks, getting some depth, getting pieces that they can use to start, but also the secondary. The secondary and the offensive line are two pieces they're still very much trying to work on here in this level. And with the NFL draft coming up in just over a few weeks, this is the perfect outcome. Now, when we're looking at this type of trade here, in specific for the Chiefs, moving back to 31st while also getting some more picks is another great idea, and especially a team like the Chiefs who are still around that later half of the later end of the first round, but also having a few other picks is exactly what the Vikings are looking for. They're looking to add to this extra depth piece in the draft as well as depth players, and when we're looking at the current Vikings picks right now, first, of course, the 21st overall. Then they only go 97th, 139th, and 187. Now, these picks are not enough for the Minnesota Vikings to be able to go out here, comfortably say that they got what they wanted, and they're building off of that. They need to go out here, get a few extra picks, add some depth, and use some of these, maybe a first and maybe a second that they go out and acquire on either an offensive lineman or a secondary player. And the secondary player that we have here in this trade is something that I've spoken about here on the channel before, although there are many other options as to why this is a perfect trade that we will get into here in a few moments. But when we look at the Chiefs picks, kind of in the same area, they have that number 31st in round 1, a round 2 at 63rd, a round 3 at 66, round 4 at 133, and a round 7 at 266. Now, the interesting ones here are the 63rd and the 66th. Of course, that 31st would be involved in the swap just to move down a few picks, but the Vikings will be looking for either of the two, or maybe both of them, if they choose to kind of swap another pick or another player here involved in something, just to be able to get as many as they can. Now, the Chiefs looking to move up to get that offensive lineman is obviously what they're looking for. They need that Kelvin Banks Jr. If he does drop to that point, would certainly be a big asset for the Chiefs, and they would be willing to spend quite a bit of their assets to move up to that pick to be sure to get him. Now, the possibilities are still there that he goes earlier than that. We've seen him in earliest draft picks such as number 11 and 12, which is quite all over the place. We really don't know where anybody is guaranteed to go yet, apart from the top 3, and still even then it's a bit murky, but using these Chiefs picks, comparing these to the Minnesota Vikings that we have currently right here, it does seem like it is a very, very good idea. The Vikings could acquire either those 63rd or 66th, or not both, from the Kansas City Chiefs when things fall into place. Now, looking at as well the Vikings depth chart on defense, it's been no surprise that the Vikings have been looking for a secondary player, whether that is going to be another safety, whether that is going to be another corner, whether it's going to be both. We know that they're all options at this point, and everything is on the table. The Vikings have created a stellar defense here, but the only thing that they really lacked here in this offseason, apart from acquiring, or reacquiring, I should say, Byron Murphy Jr., was adding more depth to the secondary. They have the depth. They're good there, but looking to add some of these top pieces to the secondary. We reacquired Harrison Smith, signing him to another deal, extending him, Byron Murphy coming back, but apart from that, they have no star names really to be able to throw out there on the secondary. And we don't need any star names. We need someone who can go out here, trust on every snap, which is something the Vikings want to get more of, and be able to make it to the point where they didn't get last year, the Super Bowl, and ultimately win that. With this lineup, they have the capabilities of doing that, just adding these extra pieces are what is going to be needed. And a player who is around this 31st pick in this specific mock draft and the trade ultimately going to was Azariah Thomas. Some I've spoken about here, coming from Florida State University. A great corner. Ultimately, didn't have the best of seasons this year because nobody was throwing to him. So you're not putting up the stats that you want to see really when you're drafting him, but having him up 31st and having Malachi Starks being, as you see on top there, the pick right before at 30 is something the Vikings would really toy around with if those players are available at that position. And we know the Vikings still could be looking at whether it is Malachi Starks, whether it is Azariah Thomas, whether it's any of these other secondary players that me and Griffin have spoken about here on the channel. We know that they're all options at this point. Nothing is off the table for the Vikings when it does come down to it. And if they're available at the 30, 31, 32, the Vikings will not hesitate to move down. We've also seen them available at, the 20s and maybe taken before that. And once again, kind of comes back to not having any certainty of what's going to happen, when it's going to happen here at the NFL draft because of all the, craziness that's going around this season with the players and where they're picked. But with the projected trade, Azariah Thomas here at 31st would definitely be a win for the Vikings in this case. Then you go out, get whether it is an offensive lineman in the second round, whether it's another secondary player, maybe it's a safety, if it's Azariah Thomas. Maybe if you draft Malachi Starks, you'll go get a corner with that third round pick. There's so many options here for the Vikings, and I think the Chiefs in this specific trade, this specific mock one, as of right here, is the perfect team to be able to do this with because of the picks they have. Having a second and a third back-to-back picks in this area of 63rd, 66, 2 different rounds, certainly is something the Vikings are going to look to explore, and would not be surprised if Kwesi has already kind of put this out there to Andy Reid and put this out to the Chiefs organization that they're open to moving down to them early, whether or not it is going to be a trade for the first, there may be a second and a third, or whether it's just a first and second. We're still unsure about that, but we know Kwesi's not going to fold for anything that's not at the value of this pick, and the Vikings hold quite a bit of chips in their hand right now with what they want to do. So let me know in the comments below who you want to see drafted by the Vikings, whether it is a type of trade like this, whether you think it's a secondary, safety, corner, or an offensive lineman need to be drafted first, and what do you think about moving down, let's just say 7 picks at this draft, if it were to be this Chiefs one. What do you want else? What else do you want? Do you want a second, a third? You want both? Let me know what you think, because the Vikings are going to have to plan this out very, very carefully when it does come down to it, but we don't even need to trade it, realistically. The Vikings have a great set of assets right now. They can use that pick at there, but looking to be able to get that depth just added to it in the draft, I think is the perfect option. So let me know what you think in the comments below. That's all I got in this video. If you did enjoy, give it a like, hit the sub button as well. We have a lot of Vikings content coming out as we head towards the draft, head towards free agency. Head towards the draft. The Vikings are going to be very active. We know that this is going to happen. We know the Vikings are ready to make a big splash here in the draft. Whether or not there's going to be another big trade, it's yet to be determined, but I think the draft is a great spot for it, so stick around, find out all of the Vikings news. We'll have it here first, but like I said, that's all I got in this video. Thank you for watching. Hope you have a great day. See you later.